what is it about the topic of UAPs, UFOs that fascinate you so much? Because I went back over your story and some of the interviews you've done over the years, and you've been interested in this subject for a long time.
Oh yeah. I mean, what happened now in my life is that I have a lot more freedom than I used to. When I was younger, I had to work really hard, and I had a dream, and I didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I was very busy. I didn't have time to explore those philosophical questions. Who are we? Where we come from? Are we alone in the universe? These sort of things. Now that I have more freedom, um, I'm not completely free, but we always have certain responsibilities. But I have a lot more freedom nowadays than I used to. So I have time to explore those questions, and it's a subject that really interests me. I think it's a subject that has been ridiculed for many years in the mainstream media. But now, as we see, even I think yesterday was a Congress hearing in Washington D.C. About UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. And it's something that is taken very, very seriously, especially by the American government.
This person's story has always fascinated me, and I've never spoken to someone who's met this person. Now, I know you had your sort of own UFO experience, and you had the opportunity to talk about that with this man. And I want to ask you about Bob Lazar, a man who, obviously, for those who aren't familiar, claimed to work in a facility called S4 near Area 51, where there was a supposed UFO reverse engineering program. Now, this has always been a story that's fascinated me. I've read his book, and I remember thinking, this guy's either telling the truth or he's the world's best liar. Because his story is so detailed, so fascinating. Now, having had the opportunity to meet Bob Lazar, what is your honest opinion of him and your honest assessment? Is he genuine?
Not only that I met Bob, but I met him several times. We went to dinner together. I consider him as a friend. I really enjoy his company. He've talked to me out, not in the outside of the public light. He said a lot of stuff to me because I had some question to ask him. Certain things I can't talk about it publicly, but what I can say is, for me, he's one of, or probably the most compelling first-hand witness that I can think of. I believe the reason why he got hired, on top of his competency, they could have choose someone else that has just as much competency or even better competency than him. But the reason why I believe he was chosen, it's because he was easy to discredit. I believe when they hire you for this sort of job, they make a big background check on you. And they did for Robert Lazar, for Bob Lazar. And there's nothing positive from his perspective that could come out. He came out, I believe he was honest. I believe from his perspective, he's telling the truth. From his perspective, I believe that he believes what he's telling us. Not only because his story has never changed, because there's nothing positive from his perspective that comes out of this. Doesn't make money, doesn't, he got highly discredited. And if you follow the story, it's very interesting. A lot of things that he said at the time now are coming to fruition. He was talking about things that are now true. How did he know at the time? What a coincidence, you know? So for me, he's not part of military. Also, he cannot be a disinformation agent. If he is, he's a great actor. And he's, who knows? But everything from his perspective, because he came out with that story, it exposed him and did him a lot more harm than positive. And he's a very, very smart and educated person. I cannot see how someone smart like him would have done something like that to discredit himself and to make to shoot himself in the foot, so to speak, you know?
And lastly, the way he talks about propulsion, things like that, has that sort of reaffirmed the images that are in your mind from what you believe you saw?
One thing that I've discussed with him is that I myself had an experience one day, and I was not alone. I was training in Albuquerque, and I was in a car, and Mike Van Arsdale, who's a former UFC fighter, was driving the car. In the passenger seat, it was Rashad Evans. I was in the back with Ali Abdelaziz, who's actually Khabib's, Nurmagomedov, Kamaru Usman's manager, and many others. And another guy called Alejandro that I don't know what he has become. I lost contact with him. So we were in a car driving and on the highway. It was at night, and we saw something in the sky. And when we saw something, it was crazy. I felt like not like the time stopped, but like we all sort of got sort of hypnotized by this thing. Like it became silent. And then it came towards us, changed direction, and then it changed that direction again and skip and shoot through the sky and disappear. And when I talked to Bob Lazar about that incident, it behaved exactly like how he described. It's like when it flies locally. Imagine like you have like a disc or a triangle or any shape of a UAP. When it flies locally, it goes like this. But when it goes far, it point its belly towards the target or where it want to go, and it shoot. And the reason why you have the reason he says that from our perspective, when we see something skipping, is because of the distortion in space and time. Maybe the driver of this thing, if there is, does not witness the same thing from his perspective, but from our perspective, we see distortion, and that's one of the reasons we see the skip. And when you see pictures of UAPs, very often on the edge, you see it's like blurry. And one of the reasons, according to those guys that are in physics that study this phenomenon, they claim it's because of the distortion of space and time. They use a different ways of propulsion. They don't fire something in the back to propel themselves forward. They create an emptiness in front of like gravity, something that fall. Let's say I'm here and it fall, but they can do that. They can choose the direction they want to go, and it fall. I do not understand the concept. I'm not educated enough, and I highly doubt there is a lot of people that can. I'm just saying that's the theory behind it, the UFO folklore. What these things are, I don't know. I know there is a phenomenon there certainly is a phenomenon that is happening that is worth investigating. I don't know if it's foreign adversary, if it's a group of people that has developed a new way of propulsion. But these things, according to highly sophisticated military instrument, these things goes to incredible speed, then make a 90-degree turn. It's also transmedium. It goes through air, water without interruption. A lot of time it has been seen underneath the ocean. It has been seen going through mountain. I don't know what it is. It appears sometimes under the form of a disc shape, under a form of a triangular, of a square, of an orbs. There's different kinds of these things. I don't know what it is. And the weird thing about what happened to me when I was in the car that night is that we all saw something. We all saw something, but when we talk about it, because I've heard interviews where they talk about this incident, we described it differently, which makes us look like liars because to me, it lasted for about, I don't know, 15 seconds. It was a light coming towards us. Then it changed direction again, and then it skipped and disappeared. Maybe 15 seconds, but I heard other guys that were with me, they said it was 2 minutes. And it seems like our perception of what happened is different because there is nothing that we can identify that behave the same way. You see a plane, it's a plane. You see a ship, it's a ship. But what we saw, I've never seen anything like it. There's nothing I can identify that looks like this.
Yeah, I've heard Rashad. Is it Rashad Evans was there? I've heard him tell the story. So, yeah, it's amazing.
What did he say? How did he describe it? I think I've heard it, but I can't remember.
No, I think it was very similar account to yourself. I don't know if it was as quick as 15 seconds when he was describing it, but
even from my perspective now, because it's been a few years, I can't really remember how it looks like because I have no point of reference. It's like, not that my memory has been suppressed, but like I don't have a clear memory of what I've seen. I know it happened. I know it did. And we all know it did, but I don't know what happened. I don't have a clear memory of what it was. I only remember that I describe it as a sort of a greenish triangular shape with no edge, no pointy edge, like rounded, but I don't remember those details. I don't remember the actual thing happening. I know it happened, but I can't remember in detail. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, it's
maybe I'm brain damaged, and who knows? No. That's why people like to say, "Oh, they're all fighter. They were all brain damaged in the car." They collectively make up that story.
When I was thinking about this topic, it brought me back to reading your book many years ago. I think you published it in 2013. I actually have it here, The Way of the Fight. And right at the end of the book, I think the last line of the book, you say, progress I've learned comes from openness. So what sort of things post-retirement are you now more open to than ever?
A lot of things. I like to explore the unknown. One thing that I have used throughout my career, and now I know a lot of people will roll their eyes when I say this, it was imagery. I was doing a lot of it's a meditation on its own, but I was doing a lot of imagery. I was using different methods and tricks to trying to hypnotize myself. Hypnosis is a real thing. I know a lot of people don't believe in it. You can be hypnosed by someone, but you can try to program yourself to self hypnose yourself, and that's what I was doing. I've started doing this at a very young age, and when you have a dream, I think it's important to, when you talk about preparation, everything. Your odds of success, I believe, are mostly dependent on your preparation. And when you talk about preparation, a big part of it is physical. The work needs to be physically done, but there's a big part also that is mental. And a lot of people don't take that in consideration. And I always did. I'm a strong believer in the power of visualization. It's something that could be esoteric for a lot of people, metaphysic, you call it whatever you want. Some people not gonna believe in it, but I do. And through all my career, I've forced myself to visualize. I've took time out of my schedule, and it was very important to me to do that on a daily basis, to visualize myself succeeding. And maybe because I'm obsessive compulsive by nature, when I had a goal in mind, I was obsessed. It occupied all my mind, all my time. I was thinking about it when I woke up in the morning, when I drive my car, when I eat. It was an obsession. And sometimes I had some imagery that pops up in my head. Sometimes they were good, sometimes they were bad. But I think what is important is that when you work on these sort of things, when you have a bad imagery that pops up in your head, you don't want to end it on a negative note. You want to force yourself. Let's say for me, it was in fighting. Let's say I was, getting in trouble, getting clipped, dropped down, and this imagery pops up in my head of my upcoming fight. I don't want to end that imagery on a negative note because it will leave a scar up here. So what I did is I forces myself to see how I'm gonna scramble back on my feet and take back control of the fight, and then after I can go on and do what I needed to do in my life. So I think sometimes when you're haunted by bad imagery, it's a sign of intelligence because you prepare yourself of the worst outcome. I think it's important to work on it and to prepare yourself to see how you're going to take care of the problem and to spend time on imagery, because the more time you spend when you're going to be doing it for real, it's going to feel like it's not the first time you've done it, and it will be like a movie that you already seen. And for me, it gives me a lot of confidence.
Yeah, and I can testify to this because I think with hypnosis, people assume it's sort of stage hypnosis, someone making you do something, having control over you. But I had Dr. David Spiegel on this podcast, versed in hypnosis. And I asked him, I was quite skeptical of how well it would work. And I asked him if it was possible for him to do some sort of hypnotic exercise with me on the podcast. And he took me through this hypnosis, this visualization process. And it really did change my mind on the power of hypnosis and visualization, because even though I had my eyes closed, it was like it almost helps you to see better. Is the only way I can describe it. Like people assume hypnosis is about closing your eyes from the real world, but I think it actually helps you see what is really there and removes the things that are in your way.
And I think also, I'm convinced that there are a lot of knowledge and data on that subject that have been suppressed and I'm convinced that a lot of secret agency have used that to perpetrate maybe certain crimes or making people do certain things, maybe against their will. I know they say that you're not hypnosis, you cannot do things against your will, but I think it's a lie. I don't think it's true. I think you can program someone in a way to make him do something against his will. I can't remember the name of the guy, the famous American hypnosis guy. He proved it, that it was real. Um, I'm a big believer in the power of the mind, and I think the mind is the most important part, because if you think of anything in life, like if you have a goal in mind or anything, let's say you think of something, it needs to materialize up here. It needs to come to fruition here before it materializes. You know what I mean? In physically, if you think of a room does not appear physically right away. It will happen here in the mind of someone. He will build a plan, then he will see make a plan how he is going to decorate it, and then he will physically do it. And I think everything in life, like growing up, I wanted to be world champion in mixed martial art. I needed to make it happen here before it happened physically, before it materialized.
And on that visualizing self-talk, I wonder how far that goes, because I remember reading a story about how your mother used to play you records with subliminal messages in them as a kid, like positive affirmations, right? How I wonder how that served you.
Wow, you made your research. I'm impressed. So my mom, when I was a kid, I grew up because I had big problem growing up as a kid. I was a very different person that I am now. I had a big problem of confidence. I couldn't even look at someone in the eyes, and for that reason, I was getting picked on. I was getting bullied at school. So my parents put me in martial art at a very young age, and also they before I went to bed. But I mean, I know when I was in bed, as I was trying to sleep, she used to put these tapes, and it was a recording, like a hypnosis recording, like a you're the best. If you work hard, everything is possible. You know, like you need to make sure you do everything that needs to be done to achieve your goal, like stuff like that. Like, and it lasts for about 30 minutes, and then it was sound waves that help you sleep. But every night I was listening to these tapes, you know. People love me. I love myself. You know, I'm lucky. I'm you know what I mean? All these positive things, these positive thoughts. And it's something that I think had a very, very beneficial effect on me growing up. It made me very strong mentally, because at the time I was going through a lot of stuff. It was very hard. I was getting bullied at school, even at home. Things were not very well. My dad was drinking, and then obviously after I start, you know, when I start doing karate and everything, I start collecting metal. It started as a self defense, then it developed into a passion. Then later on, it transformed into how I earn a living. And also my dad, what happened is he was drinking and everything, but I was very fortunate to have a great role model, because my dad, when I was early teenager, he stopped drinking, and I witnessed how hard it was, because he had a disease. He's an alcoholic. You know, now he completely stopped for, can't remember, for like more than 30 years. He haven't touched one drop of alcohol. And not only that, he stopped drinking at the time, he also, after a few years, start mentoring young people that want to stop drinking also. So I was very fortunate to see that, to have my dad doing this in front of me, because I saw how hard it was to quit drinking, and I saw him struggle. And it was, for me, the best model of perseverance that I could have. All my hard work, mentality, my perseverance, I think I got that from my dad. And I was very fortunate to have a great example. It all started negative, but then it transformed into a very positive for me.
You touched on bullying there, and I know there's going to be young kids, maybe even adults watching this, who suffer bullying. What advice would you give to people out there on how to handle a bully and to make sure you don't fall victim to them?
The reason I think I was bullied as a kid, it's not because I was physically weaker than the other kid. It's because mentally I did not have any confidence growing up. Um, when I remember when I was walking with my shoulders shrugged up like this. I couldn't look at nobody in the eyes. I shook someone's hand. I was looking down. When I started doing karate, I remember the first thing you learn in karate is when you step in the dojo in Kyokushinkai, you have to put your back down and you stand up straight and you go, us. It's a sign of respect. It means, us, like I salute you, I'm here. And when you do that, everybody who's training is looking at you. And I remember the first day when I did that, it was so hard for me. It was very demanding for me. Then after I start training and karate changed me from the inside out. I remember I was complaining at the time that I wanted to change my environment, but what I realized, and I needed to first change myself from the inside out, then my environment will change. Karate taught me to stand up straight. When I talk to someone, I look at him in the eyes. When I shake hand, I affirm and shake, and you know, I look at him in the eyes, and I carry myself in a different way. So what happened is through my karate teaching, I become more confident. And the bullying stopped. I wish I could tell you I beat up all my bully like a movie scenario, but that's not how it happened. It happened in a slow progression because I changed from the inside out. And bullied, they always go after weak people. They don't go after people who are confident. So my advice to parents that has kids that are victim of bullying, and I'm not claiming to be a bully expert because time has changed since when I was young. Now it's more, a online bullying, stuff like that. It's more humiliation. In my days, it used to be very physical. They wait for you in the schoolyard after class and they try to beat you up, stuff like that. But I think it's for parents that has kids that are victim of bullying. I think you're trying to boost your kid's confidence, and the way you do it, you ask your kid what does he want to do, what is his passion, not what you want him to do, but what he really want to do. It could be sport, could be football, could be art, could be singing, dancing, whatever it is. Put it in that discipline. If you put him or put her in something that she loves, the chance are they will develop a certain passion. They're going to put time and effort to develop their craft, and therefore they're going to improve their skill and get better and increase their confidence. And it will reflect on their demeanor, the way they carry themselves. And I think that's something that could help a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, is that a lot of people know that mental strength is important, but what you've described there is almost a physical strength, and mental strength is sort of downstream from that. It's a byproduct of working on yourself physically.
Absolutely. It's all linked together, I believe.
Another thing that you've talked open about, and I know last time we spoke about this, people really resonated with this and they wanted to hear a little bit more, is you are one of the only fighters that I've seen talk so openly about how they feel before a fight. You've talked about how nervous and scared you felt, even in your prime. I think in your book you describe it as a torment only Dante could have imagined. So when you feel that level of fear, how do you process that? Not only just in general life, but for someone like you who's fighting, you're competing at the highest level with the stakes at at the highest level. How do you process fear and turn it into something magical? Because I know you also describe fear as a magical process.
Yeah. I remember early on in my career, I thought that the fear over time will disappear. I thought that, I'm gonna gain more experience, and over time I will not be afraid anymore. It will, I will become more courageous, and it will, I'm not going to be scared anymore. What I realize is that the opposite happened. When you are successful, every fight is bigger than the previous one. So you have more to lose. More people are watching you. There's more at stake. Therefore, you get more nervous and you're more scared. And I remember at the time I used to seek the help of sport psychologists. I used to, because when I was looking around with my training partners and the guys that I was fighting against, everybody seems to not be scared. They were all like, "I'm gonna kick your ass Saturday night. I'm excited," and they were happy to be there, and I wasn't. I was like, man, if I could snap my finger, fast forward right away after the fight, I would do it every single time. I don't like the process. I'm scared. It's unbearable. So I decided to hire sport psychologists, and I saw many one, and I couldn't connect with a lot of those, but one of them kind of connect with me, and they were all trying to brainwash me and trying to tell me, "Hey, George, you're not afraid, you're excited." And I'm like, I always make that joke. I'm like, I don't know if it's a language barrier, but I would be excited for other reasons. I'm not excited to not knowing if I'm going to be badly hurt, humiliated, or winning on Saturday night. I'm scared. And then I made peace with it. I realized that I should not be afraid to admit that I'm afraid, because there's no courage without fear. And you can learn how to tame your fear, to domesticate your fear. Your fear, in my case, I've learned that fear made me much more dangerous. My fear increases my reaction time, increases my explosivity. Because I'm scared, I'm training harder in the fear that my opponent is getting more prepared than I am. So it keeps me sharp. And the way you counter fear, it's by building up your confidence. And confidence is not the absence of fear. It's knowing that you have what you need in order to succeed. The fear will never disappear, but you need to accept it as a good evil, a necessary evil to make you perform better. I know that if I'm not afraid, I'm not going to perform as good. And the best thing I can do to counter it is to prepare myself the best I can, to make sure that when it's fight day, I'm the best version that I could be. Therefore, I can go out there with confidence and have faith in myself, because I know I'm the best I could be. If I make an analogy, it's a little bit like for a kids who have an exam at school, a very important exam. Let's say he studied very hard. When the day comes, he's going to be scared. But because he studied, he has the right to walk in there with confidence, because he knows that he prepared himself the best he could. But he's still going to be scared, but it's normal to be scared. But he's going there with confidence. So that's the optimal way to increase your odds of success. However, if he did not study, he's going to be scared, but he's not going to be confident, because you can lie to everyone, but you cannot lie to yourself deep down inside. So it's always best to go there with the best preparation, and with the preparation, you increase your confidence. But unfortunately, the fear will never disappear. Of course, there's guys that might use drugs or whatever to make the fear disappear, but I don't think it's a good way to perform. I think it diminish your performance. I think it's important to embrace fear.
Yeah, and I suppose if you weren't nervous about an outcome, then you probably don't care enough about what you're doing in the first place, right? So with that in mind, What fight, when you think back over your career, all the fights you've had, what fight week was the most scared or the most fear you'd ever felt?
My 2 losses are very special for me. My first losses against Matt Hughes was probably the fight that I was the most scared, because mentally I couldn't see myself winning. I I, I was fighting one of my idol, and I put him on a pedestal, and I was going into that fight not to win but to not lose. So I remember the week leading up to the fight, I had a big problem sleeping. The night of the fight, I was like sleep deprived. I was like so scared. I couldn't even look at him in the eyes when we did the face off with the referee before the fight happened. And I believe I lost that fight because I overestimate him. I made him too big for what he was. I learned a big lesson. When I fought him the second time, I beat him because I give him more of a more honest assessment, and I had more confidence in myself. That's one of the fight that my first fight that I've lost. And I learned a big lesson. The second fight that I've lost, it was the opposite. I became champion. I beat Matt Hughes, who was at the time a legend. And everybody was giving me high praise and everything. And my next fight was against a guy who barely made it for a title contention. He worked his way up. He had a very hard way up. You know, he had a rocky story. You know, his career was up, down, ups, down. Was not a straight line. But damn, he worked really hard, and he made it. He barely made it for a title fight. And I remember before the fight, it was the only fight that I slept well. I never sleep well before a fight, and I slept well before that fight. And not that I underestimate him, but I did not took him for what he was, because Matsara at the time was known for his grappling prowess, his submission skill. He was not known to be a dangerous striker, even if in reality he was a dangerous striker because he had very powerful punches. But I didn't. I might have did not. I probably did not make a right assessment of him because I was only focusing on defending against his grappling. And what happened in that fight, I got clipped with a punch that I never saw coming. It was coming outside of my field of vision, clipped me right on the hair. I lost my equilibrium. I get hit by a few punches during an exchange, and I lost that fight. So my first loss was maybe because I put the guy too high. And my second loss was the opposite because I maybe put him too low. I didn't really assess him as well as I should, in a way that I should have seen these things. Of course, in the rematch, I did very well. I beat him because I made a better assessment and I prepared myself better. Not that I was so much physically better, but I mentally, my preparation was more sharp, was better. And I think it's very important. Confidence is very important. Like it can help you perform or underperform how you do it. It needs to be, you can't be too confident, but you have to have some kind of confidence also.
Oh, I love that. And that's really why I love your story and your career. And I like at the top of the show when I said, in my opinion, the greatest MMA fighter of all time, those are the reasons why, you had 2 losses, you avenged them, and in both you showed exactly what you learned from them, applied to them in the next fight. I wonder, for someone where you talked earlier about having confidence issues as a child, it's interesting when you go on to then be in the conversation to being arguably or one of the best in your field. I wonder how you assess where you sit in that conversation now. As someone who was once, had very little confidence, do you feel you give yourself the credit, and do you think you're the greatest fighter of all time? And if not you, who?
I did very well. I'm among one of the best. I think so. But there's other guys that
Mm.
that are very serious contenders that might be better than me as well. Um, for me, the best of all time for his time is Royce Gracie. He was my inspiration. He come from a time that there were no weight class. The rules were probably there were no rules. You could do pretty much everything you want except eye gouge, biting. It was a different time, and I really admire his courage because he was not the biggest fighter. He was one of the smallest one. And what he did, winning the first UFC tournament, was very inspiring for me. And for me, what he has done was never repeated after. It was very unique, and I'm happy I witnessed that. It changes my life.
I wonder what's harder, becoming a champion or staying a champion?
Great question. It's very hard to become champion because when you're a champion, you know where you're going. You have a benchmark. You know who's on top. And from the beginning of your career till when you fight for the title, in my case, it was Matt Hughes. When I first started in UFC, it was Matt Hughes, and he was still there when I got a title fight. So it's like a benchmark. You know where you're going, and you have time to study him. It's very hard. You have to climb like a mountain with a lot of obstacle, and sometimes it's not a straight line. Sometimes you go here, sometimes you hit a wall, but you have to persevere and always go up. It's hard, but it's much harder to stay champion once you're champion. And the reason is that when you're a champion, you become the target from the entire roster. Everybody's studying your game, try to find a chic in your armor. However, from your perspective, you have only a few months to prepare when you have a fight announced. But that person's been preparing for a very long time. So he has more time than you to prepare. So when you're a champion, it's very important that you're no longer competing against others. You're competing against yourself. You always want to be better today than you were yesterday. Because if you don't improve, the competition will improve and catch you at some point. And it's very important that when you're champion, you need to try to constantly reinvent yourself, to do things that has not been done. You need to be creative, find ways to try to improve that perhaps never been done before. Because if you don't find a way to improve, sooner or later they will catch up and you will be passed. And that's the nature of sport. Records are made to be broken. So you have to, in a way, to beat your own record, to be better, constantly improving.
Is that why you hear so many champions talk about when they're asked about potential fights and they talk about who interests them the most? Because, like you said, when you are when you're on the rise, you're looking to become a champion. You have something you're working towards. You have a metric to try and achieve. But when you're a champion, that you don't have the same sort of hunger as that up and comer, right? Who wants to become a champion for the first time? So do you have to keep finding new ways to motivate yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was champion, I was competing indirectly against champion from other weight classes
Hmm.
for legacy status. I was competing indirectly against Anderson Silva, Chuck Liddell, you know, like all those guys that, even the guys from the past that were champion, that you try to beat their record. You need to find yourself a motivation. Because if your goal is to be champion and then after you have no more motivation, the competition will catch you, will pass you by. So once you're champion, you need to constantly to look for what you can do to reach another level, to climb even higher. And sometimes it takes creativity, imagination. In my case, I was competing against other champions and other fighters that competed also in the past. Oh, Matthews was great. I want to have more title defense than Matthews. I want to surpass him, even though he's no longer compete. I want to be better. It's like a competition. It's sport. I want to do better than him. I want to beat this record. I want to have more finish than this guy. More. That's what it's about. And you need to be hungry. You always need to be hungry. The day that you're satisfied is the death. It's you should retire when you're satisfied. It's great when you're satisfied in life, but it's not great as an athlete. If you're satisfied, you better retire, my friend, especially in the fight game, because you play baseball, play football, play basketball. You don't play fighting. Fighting is it's not a game. It's a sport, but it's something else. You're gonna lose your brain cell and everything. And I think it's sad. A lot of fighter also they retire too late, and it's very sad. And 95% approximately of them, like in MMA and boxing, they take fight that they shouldn't take, because from their point of view, they always think that they can come back. Maybe you can come back 1-2 times. Well, what's the point? You gotta get beat up. Like you think about the fight, you're gonna win the fight, but how about your preparation? You get punched in the head and brain damage. It's not worth it. You might have another 50 years to live. Better be healthy. And on top of that, this is for health reason, for business reason. If you retire when you're on top of your craft, your stock worth a lot of money. So when you turn around, you have a lot of business opportunity that opens to you. If you retire on a losing streak, all those opportunity will be gone. They will no longer be there for you. So your money, yeah, you're gonna make more money in one shot for a fight, but in the long run, it's better to retire on top, because you're gonna keep making on money with those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. And as you were saying that then, names flashing across my mind like BJ Penn and Tony Ferguson. And, I mean, the other day in that Misfits boxing, we saw Luke Rockhold get knocked out that was a pretty nasty knockout to watch, right? So, and I wonder how you view combat sports promotions like a Misfits, or, influence of boxing against these legends of the sport, how you view that, some of your colleagues and friends, being put in these situations, and yes, making a lot of money, but putting themselves up against it in the public eye like that.
I think it's a form of entertainment. I mean, first of all, I'm a martial artist. I fought for a living. I consider myself an entertainer to the same degree of an actor, of a singer. I earn a living because people pay me they pay to see me perform. But there's different form of entertainment in the fighting world. There's entertainment when you want to see who's the best fighter in the world, or you want to see who's going up in rank and going down in rank. Or there's also a form of entertainment nowadays that is more common, that with influencers, or where there's a situation that has been created. Maybe someone said something about this guy, and this guy said this, and therefore thereafter there is an emotional buildup that is created, and there's a fight that is that that materialize through that process. It's a form of entertainment, and I'm not a hater. I there's room for every form of entertainment. I like to see those fights as well. And I watch it sometime when I have some interest. To the same degree that I don't watch all the UFC fights, but I watch some of the fighter that I like to watch to see perform because I think I can learn from them. And yeah, there's guys that takes fights sometime because I can call it a money grab. They want to make money. Sometimes there's guys that takes fight because maybe they think they can come back, and most of the time they can't. It's very rare that you see an athlete after a certain age that has a second win and came back up. It it has happened in the past. It has, but it's very rare. And what is sad sometimes is when you're a fighter, you need a team behind you, and your team has a big influence on your success. And the way you build up your team, you have to build up your team with people that are competent and people that you can trust. I've made mistake in my life in the past. I've hired people that are competent, but I couldn't trust, so they took advantage of me, and I lose a lot of money. I'm lucky because it happened early on in my career, but I've learned that it's just as bad if you hire people that you can trust, but turns out to not have the competency. What's gonna happen is it's gonna make you all waste your time. So sooner or later, you're gonna have, if you want to progress, you're gonna have to let them go, and it's gonna create drama in your inner circle. So people that are competent and people that you can trust, it's very important to be successful in the fight game. Because I'm a fighter. I don't have all the skills and the competency to do everything. I need an agent. I need a lawyer. I need need a masseuse, someone, maybe an osteopath. Outside of all my coaches from different style of fighting, you need all that. And a lot of guys that I can see that are making comebacks sometimes, and we all know that they shouldn't, are people that do not have a great team. One thing a lot of time they share in comment is that they have a team of people that want to take advantage of them. They might not seeing it, but from an outside view, if you would ask some of their close relative, I bet they would tell them. I had this conversation with many people about that, by the way. I can't say a name because it will be disrespectful, but
Yeah, of course.
I was very fortunate at the end of my career, even before my fight against Michael Bisping. Even my close friend, even my own people in my entourage, they were telling me, "Why you want to do this? What else do you have to prove? Why? Why?" I was like, "Man, I want to give it another shot." Like, and when I retired, nobody told me, "Oh, it's a bad decision. You should come back and do another one, another one." All the people in my inner circle says, "Thanks God, now you can go on and do something else with your life. Now you can enjoy the fruit of your labor." And these were real friends. You know what I mean? These people they care about me. They don't only want to use me to stay in the spotlight, because they were really there for me. And the problem in this business, it's a shark world of shark. There's a lot of people that are dishonest and want to use you like a fruit. They want to suck up all the juice, and when you don't have anymore, who's next? Who's next that I can suck all the juice? Like that's my analogy to it. And it's very sad. There's a lot of fighters they don't see that, and it's hard to see that from your perspective. But what you need to do is you need to ask your family, your close relative, the people that really care about you, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think?" Maybe they will tell you something that you don't see sometimes. And you need to take that in consideration, because these are the people that has a different perspective, an outside view of the situation, that they can maybe see something that you do not see from your perspective.
No, that's brilliant. I'm glad you've got that circle, and it's a shame that some people don't have that luxury. And just a couple more questions from me before I let you go, and you can drink all your electrolytes. Then, you talked a little bit about legacy and legacy fights, and I know towards the end of your career, one fight that many people were calling or still call their dream fight, and I know you alluded to it last time that we spoke, that it was once a very minor possibility, was you and Khabib. Now, in your honest opinion, if you were to really reflect and think about that, how that would have gone, provided you were both, feeling fit, you were both healthy, you were both in a good place, what's your honest assessment on how that, or many people's dream fight, would have played out?
I will be 100% honest with you. It's not always the best fighter that wins the fight. It's the fighters that fight the best the night of the fight. Same thing in hockey, basketball, football. Not always the best team that wins the games, the team that play the best the night of the game. Maybe we would have fight 10 times, maybe it would be different outcomes happening. But for some reason, people believe that the best fighter always win, which is not true. Not true. There's a lot of factor that can influence a fight. He's a remarkable fighter, Khabib. He had a perfect career. Probably, I can't think of someone who has a more perfect career. He's undefeated. He's clean. Never got caught taking drugs or performance enhancement. He went through like a rampage at the end of his career, like go through a lot of amazing fighter, Connor, Gaethje, Michael Johnson. He was like, the guy is a beast. And very hard to say. It's style makes fight. The reason why it did not happen is a question also of timing. Question of timing. It takes three people to make a fight. It takes one fighter, another fighter, and also the promotion. The promotion did not made it when it was time to make it. Same thing with Anderson Silva. When the fight with Anderson Silva, everybody was speculating about it. They didn't make it because if I don't know from Anderson Silva point of view, but for me, we've talked about it at one time with the Fertitta brother, but it never came to fruition in a way that I have a contract with UFC. But my contract, the way it works is let's say you have 4 fights on your contract. Let's say I already had 1 done and I had 3 more fights. You know that you're going to get that much money for this one. And if you win, you're going to get that much money and that much money. This is if I'm at that time, I was a champion in the welterweight division. But if you want me to go take a risk and fight in a higher weight class, like close that contract and offer me something different. Like if I take a risk, if I derail from the original plan, that what I'm supposed to be paid for, like give me an extra. If you want me to do an extra, like I need to be compensate for that extra. And it's a question of timing, and it never happened, never was given to me. And that was not my job. That was my agent job also. I'm fighting inside the octagon. My agent, I hire very competent people to do that sort of fight for me. And it's it's a world of shark. When you're in that business, you need to have a good agent, because otherwise it's very easy to be take advantage of. And my agent never came to an agreement with the UFC for that, and it was never. It did not even came close. Everybody sometime in fight game, everybody say, "Oh, he's scared. He's this.
Yeah,
He's that," and they speculate. I'll tell you the truth. Yes, I would be scared. I would be terrified. But if the contract is signed and it's in the best of my interest, I would have walked the walk and I would have freaking make it.
Yeah.
And I don't care of how I feel, and I would freaking make it. There is for me, emotion has nothing to do. It has to do, it's an objective. If the objective is met, it's going to happen. And people, they try to put emotion into this. And that's where you get caught with that's when you get take advantage of. It's a strategy,
Yeah.
you need to be smart. It's a strategy. All that, it's all a fugazi strategy to make you derail from what should be done the right way. They're very smart people, but you cannot fall for that type of stuff.
No, I have no doubt. Amazing to speak with you again, my friend. 5 years since our last conversation. I'm so thankful we managed to make this happen again, and I really appreciate your time. This has been a really fun hour, and yes, I thank you very much.
Take care, Louis. Bye, guys.